Hi Stan, how are you doing?
I'm doing
Brilliant. We can all see and hear you. That's a good start. I'm just going to share your presentation for you. Stan's got a really excellent presentation for us, but do you just want to give yourself a bit of an introduction? Not that you need one.
Well, I will, Sophie. And I suppose really start with I was a student in baking. A long time ago, maybe, certainly sympathise and empathise with you. Yeah. I also became a flour miller as well as a baker before moving on to concentrate on cereal science. But throughout my career, the practical elements of baking have always interested me. And it's very much along that theme that I was very pleased to accept the invitation to speak today. I see we're having an echo problem.
Yeah, I've just seen that. I don't hear the echo, so.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me just take the headphones off and see if that makes it better.
Sure.
How is that for everybody now?
Guys, is that better? Can we just
check
answer if that's better or not?
Yeah, I can still pick an echo up somewhere. Okay,
okay, well, let's go with this. Sorry about the echo, everyone, but
yeah,
I think we've got a good point.
Modern technology. I'll stick to baking, I think.
Okay. You and me both.
If you like to move on to the next slide.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so the study of baking is not just a case, as some people think, of reading a few books or following a television series. Becoming a baker requires you to understand many scientific principles, blended with a sound understanding of technology and mixed with strong practical skills. The great thing about studying baking is the industry offers many opportunities for individual career development. And you can work in an artisan environment at the industrial level or in a technical capacity. The roles and environments may sound different, but common to all of them is the need to have a comprehensive understanding of the principles which underpin the manufacture of the different subgroups of bakery products. Okay, Sophie, next one. This complex mixture of background knowledge and practical skills represents a challenge in the tertiary education field where new generations of bakers are created. Quite simply, you can't teach baking without making a loaf of bread or a cake. The universities and colleges providing space and equipment for baking students can be difficult, where the resources are at a premium. Investment in new equipment is not easy to come by, and keeping up to date can be challenging. Equally challenging for bakery education is meeting the demands of the industry in terms of employable skills. And that again is simply because bakery education and technical skills are a blend and not just standalone items. Now, I prefer to look forward rather than back, but when I started baking college, day release was common, with students being able to blend a formal education with their everyday industry experiences. The concept was not a perfect solution, as often one encountered differences between the taught theory and industrial practice. However, the principle of learning while working has its merits. Bakery education and training have undergone many changes since I joined the industry, as indeed has the industry and life itself. Though I was struck at listening to Pascal to realise that actually, when I was at college, we were introduced by a craft baker from Lincolnshire to what he called an acid dough process. one of the first encounters that I had with what we now think of as sourdough. Almost a case of coming full circle. In the modern workplace, employees are more mobile and change roles more readily. Employers today often expect new bakery employees to be fully educated and trained when they start work. This is especially true for those bakers who move into technical roles, and unlike the past, there are fewer mentors to turn to in companies and less time to build experience. Baking is not alone in facing these challenges, and in recent times, many professions have moved towards the concept of continuing professional development. And this approach can be found in companies where employees are encouraged to actively develop their personal skills and add to the basic education that they have already received. Next one, thanks, Sophie. In some ways, continuously adding to your personal knowledge base should be easier, given the vast amount of information that is available to us via the web with a few taps on the keyboard or the screen. However, it has long been clear that while there is a lot of information available online, the quality of that information is sometimes questionable. And I will use a personal example to illustrate what I mean. I was taken aback a few years ago when searching online to encounter a website which credited me with being part of the team which carried out the research work that would lead to the invention of the churro bread process. I was astounded, not least because the process was launched in 1961 and I was still at school in short trousers, as you can see. I'm not suggesting for one moment that online information has no value or role in career development. Quite the opposite. I believe that it has a key role to play in developing the bakers for the future. And I believe that as an industry, we should embrace the technology to add to students' skills being taught in formal education and beyond, perhaps as part of continuing professional development. In preparing this presentation, I went on to the CPD Certification Service website to see what was available as current options for bakers. And guess what? I found none. Okay, thanks, Sophie. As many of you know, my interest lies in understanding how baking works, and most importantly, helping others to develop new products, new processes, and to deliver safe and nutritious baked foods. Consumer expectations change in response to many drivers, and bakers have to be prepared to meet and hopefully exceed those expectations. For bakery tutors, students, and trainees, there is a constant need for knowledge updating. Not so much on the basic principles, but how to use those basic principles in the manufacturing processes at all levels. And at such times, there is inevitably a need to integrate specialist knowledge into the basic curricula. In my early years in the baking industry, I was lucky to have benefited from skills from a number of key mentors, including people like Bill Collins, who we saw a few moments ago. These were individuals who had significant expertise and were willing to share it with me, not in the manner of showing me or telling me what to do, but to engage in discussing how things worked and in guiding me in the appropriate direction. I valued those interactions, and as my career developed, I've always tried to follow their example when I present to baking audiences. Thanks, Sophie. In the last 18 months or so, online training has become more prevalent as the world dealt with the challenges following the arrival of COVID-19. A few years ago, we launched BakeTrain online bread making tutorial aimed at helping bakers add to their technical knowledge on bread making. In bakery education terms, this course is aimed at level 3 and above. The study course can be carried out within a timetable which best suits the individual studying the subject. And this allows great flexibility in study, and indeed allows us to reach out internationally, not just within the UK. At the end of each of the 6 sections which comprise the course, there is an assignment to be completed to show that individuals have understood the concepts which have been presented before moving on to the next one. The assignments can be tailored according to the individual interest, and for those in employment, they can be linked with their industry roles and the business needs. Key to this approach is access to the tutors, who can provide that personal guidance and direction, as well, of course, inevitably as assessing the assignments. Next one, thank you, Sophie. Today, I'm pleased to announce that Bertrand and London South Bank University are collaborating to provide the bread making tutorial as part of a joint initiative ultimately aimed at testing options for continuing professional development for bakers. I can also reveal that behind the scenes, we at Bertrand are adding animations to help explain difficult concepts like gas bubble coalescence in bread doughs and cake batters. But unfortunately, I don't have the time in this short presentation to share the example with you. Next one, thanks, Sophie. As part of our continuing commitment at Bertrand in supporting the development of bakers for the future, we are also producing a series of low-cost technical papers which focus on different baking topics. The technical papers seek to build on the fundamentals of baking and place the different topics in the practical world. They are available through the website, 10 so far, and we're adding more on a regular basis. Okay, Sophie, next one, thanks. Increasingly, we are becoming used to having all the information that we need, quite literally, at our fingertips. A few taps on the screen of your smartphone, wherever you are in the world, and you get a library's worth of information on baking. But accessing the necessary information is only one step. In baking, you have to add the practical dimension. And this is not something that you can download from a computer or from the cloud. The blending of knowledge and practice is what makes a good baker better. It is not always about having years of experience. It is about broadening your knowledge base. There are 2 key skills you should seek to acquire with experience. One is good observation of the products and the processes that you work with. And the other is finding a way to structure that knowledge that you gain with time. There is always something new to learn, no matter how long you have been involved with baking. When things go wrong in the bakery and product quality is not on target, the ability to break the problem down and quickly find a solution is a valuable skill for bakers. Ultimately, to solve production or quality problems effectively, you have to understand the basic principles that underpin the manufacture of baked products. My favourite quote when I am teaching bakers how to solve problems comes from Einstein, who said, "You can't solve a problem with the same type of thinking that caused it." From years of working in the baking industry, I have many examples which match Einstein's quote. The one that I will use is that of a baker experiencing large and unwanted holes in bread. The phone call went along the lines something like this: "Baker, I have a problem with holes in bread, and the problem is the final moulder." Me: "How did you come to that conclusion?" Baker: I noticed that when the dough went under the final moulding board lifted up. And so I got 2 boxes of fat from the store and placed them on top of the moulding board to keep it in place. Me, after a deep breath, did that get rid of them? Baker, no. In this example, the baker's thinking was to mould the holes out with pressure, but in fact, he was creating them by damaging the gluten network with excess pressure under the moulding board. This meant that lots of little gas bubbles in the dough coalesced to become one large one, like the example illustrated in B. The practical solution inevitably started with removing the boxes of fat, readjusting the settings of the moulding board on the final moulder, and changing the rheology of the dough by adjusting the recipe water level. The next day, another call came in. Have the holes gone? Says I. Baker, yes. The solution to this baker's problem and many other similar problems in bread making is through an understanding of dough rheology and the property of gas bubbles in dough, and to match that knowledge with the practical aspects of a particular bakery. Next one, thanks, Sophie. Whether you are dealing with finding solutions with bakery problems or developing new products, you require the same level of understanding of the underpinning principles involved. If you treat the differences between the specification of an existing product and a proposed new product as though they were a fault, you can quickly develop your new product by identifying some of the key changes that you may need to make to the choice of ingredients, development, and in our modern, quickly changing world, there is less time for us to work, so the more basic information we can have at our fingertips, or preferably within our brain, the better. We have to make better use of information and our ability to structure that information to support our efforts. I tend to think of new product development as a triangle, with the sides formed by the ingredient, recipe, and process input options. Change the length of one side of the triangle, for example, by making the recipe change, and you change the whole shape of the triangle. In doing so, you may change where your target product sits within the triangle, and you may accidentally move it to an area where small changes, other small changes in ingredient qualities, can make the product unstable. Next slide, thanks, Sophie. Knowledge is as much a tool for bakers as is a mixer or an oven. If we are able to develop models based on our knowledge, we will be more readily equipped for the future challenges in baking. I am not talking about some all-singing or dancing mathematical model which would predict how to make a loaf of bread. Nor am I talking about artificial intelligence. I'm talking about combining hard data, things that we can measure, with what we call heuristic rules, that is, the rules of thumb that we as bakers know from our years of experience, and we know how baking works. And I prefer to call this a process of supported human intelligence rather than AI. Baking is certainly one of the oldest crafts practiced by humankind, but it has changed in so many ways as we continue to feed an ever-increasing global population with safe and nutritious options. The diverse nature of baking and bakery products creates many opportunities for those of us who choose to become involved with the subject. I chose to follow the scientific and technical route, and I hope that some of you will do the same, but whichever route through baking that you choose to follow, I hope that you enjoy the experience as much as I have. Good luck to you all, and thank you for listening.
Coming back now. Thank you so much, Stan, for that amazing presentation. I mean, it's so good to see the link between science and bakery, because I think quite often it's disparaged a little bit, but it's such a precise science. And I loved seeing the photos of you throughout your career, especially this black and white one on the screen now. I mean, you can't have been older than 16 then, Stan.
I'm definitely not old enough.
So I don't know if we've got any questions. I'm just going to look on the tab and see if we've got any. But first of all, I was wondering if you would answer the same question that I asked Pascal, which is, we're all bakers and we all mess it up sometimes quite badly. Sometimes you get away with it. But what is your biggest bakery fail?
Well, having heard your questions, Pascal, I had time to prepare, so I can avoid the ones that would not be shared in public under any circumstances. But in some ways, it has parallels with Pascal. It was when I was involved in new product development for what is now the Hovis company, but in those days was Rank Hovis McDoodle. And the Rank side was run by the last of the Lord Ranks, who was both CEO of the baking milling side and the film industry, strangely enough. But he was coming to the centre in High Wycombe to open the new wing, which was going to be called the Lord Rank Research Centre. And I was working on crackers, biscuits in those days. And I was supposed to be demonstrating the developments. And I practiced it a lot with getting the timing right to pull the crackers out of the oven as Lord Rank walked through the door. And I had been tipped the wink that he was on his way down the corridor, and I was the first person he would see when he entered the bakery with this tray. He stopped for a few moments, and I did not know that. So as he walked through the door, I pulled out this this tray of burning crackers, and I mean on fire. And he just looked, and he went, big sniff. He said, can't beat the smell of baking products, can he? And walked on.
Oh no! I think I've definitely done that one before. You think you're going to pull something out with such a flourish, and it's going to look perfect, and then you pull it out and it looks rubbish and it's burning. Yeah. That's a brilliant one. So we just had a couple of comments in the chat section. Hannah wanted to know which books you were talking about. So I don't know if you could give her just a quick rundown of your most valuable kind of resources and your books that you've published, so that she can. Okay.
I think, well, too many, isn't there?
I know. The most important ones we'll stick to.
I think if you're looking for a good all-round one with lots of tips, then Baking Problems Solved, second edition, is one to go for. And I apologise in advance for the price of the books. The authors have no say in the matter. So, technology bread making.
You know you're rolling in it.
Technology bread making third editions are still a pretty good solid read for bread making type thing, and perhaps one that's undervalued, I think, which I hadn't illustrated, and that's bakery food manufacture and quality, water control and effects, second edition. And that I have a little affection for that one, because it talks about water as an ingredient in baking across the full spectrum, right the way through from ingredients, through processing, and its role in baked products. And it's the first time, I think, that anybody's ever used water in the central role rather than flour.
Brilliant, thank you very much. No, I mean, there's so many books out there from you, Stan, so if anyone is interested, then just have a look online. But thank you so much for coming to speak to us today, and for your continued support for the ABST and for young bakers in general, bakery students. I know it's really greatly appreciated, so thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sure
the rest of your conference.
Thank you. Okay, well, that was brilliant. And you know, Stan is such a pillar of the industry that I'm sure you all feel the same as me, which is really glad to be able to hear him speak today. Before we move on to our next item, which is going to be a collaborative effect between Calabao and Lockdown Loaves, I just wanted to remind you all of a couple of things.